through some of these resources that we're going to share with you that Facing History and Ourselves has. My colleague, Kevin Feinberg, who's also on, he will be at a couple of points in the presentation, just entering some URLs for you so you can go to those particular resources that we have. So at this moment, what I'm going to do is I'm going to share my screen, and we're going to go through a PowerPoint, and then I'm going to walk you through our actual website. And at the very end, we'll do some Q&A. So here we go.
And Juan, I just wanted to also mention to all of our participants real quick, we will be recording this session because, again, Facing History and Ourselves has been generous enough to give of their time, and we want to share this with the greatest number of educators as possible. If you're not comfortable in having your face appear on a recording, which will be posted on the PNW BOCES YouTube site, you can simply mute your cameras, and that will actually make not only your face disappear from the recording, but also your name as well. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Greg. Appreciate that. All right. So everyone should be able to see my screen here. Okay. And in the chat box, if you don't, please just enter it, and then we'll be able to see if there's anything wrong. So welcome again. I work for Facing History and Ourselves. This particular presentation is going to focus on some resources that we have online. To think about how we can virtually teach a student-centered approach, even if we're not in the classroom itself. And hopefully some of these resources are going to be helpful for you. And we also encourage you to go to the website and check out, because I'm going to show you just some of what we have. We have a tremendous amount of things online. Most of it is free. So hopefully this will at least pique your interest to want to go back into the website and see what else we have. So again, I'm Juan, and Kevin will be sort of in the chat, and he'll be entering a couple of URLs at different points throughout the presentation. So very quickly, what we're going to do is, that was the welcome and introductions. So we're going to do a quick overview of Facing History and Ourselves, very brief, just to give you a sense of who we are and what we do. And then I'm going to walk you through these resources that we have online. And then we'll leave some time at the end for some Q&A and a couple of next steps. So the first thing we want to know is just who's joining us. So if you could please, in the chat box, enter your name, your district, and what you teach, just to get a sense of who's actually joining us today. Great. Akila, thank you. Naheem, thank you. Good to have you with us. International Community House, okay, South Bronx. Thank you, Dean, thank you, welcome. Gina, welcome. Alberta, Catherine, welcome. Nicole, great. Fred, Joe. We have some special ed folks on, good to see you. English teachers, great. Danielle, Jillian, Anne-Marie, great. So, I think it's just always nice to know who's joining these calls, so you could see there's a real sort of a spectrum of different teachers and backgrounds. And, one of the things I think we have at Facing History are resources that most of you are going to find very useful, regardless of the subject matter you teach. So thank you, and welcome to all of you. Next, I'm going to do a quick poll here. We're not going to do the poll itself, but I'm going to, in the chat box itself again, I'd love you to tell us if you're familiar with Facing History and Ourselves. So if you are, just let us know, how familiar. Like, I'm very familiar with Facing History. I don't know you at all, or I'm actually teaching a Facing History unit or using some resources. If you could enter that into the chat box, that would be great. It will help me get a sense of what your knowledge is concerning who we are and what we have to offer. Okay. So I see some of you are new to us, and that's actually really exciting. Okay, great. You've heard of us, but not really had a chance to explore or do anything with us. Well, this will be a great opportunity. Okay, Akila, thank you. That seems like you do know us. That's awesome. Good to see you. Okay, so the majority of you, it looks like, are unfamiliar with us. And actually, I think that, to me, is very exciting, because this is an opportunity to introduce you to to some great resources that we have, and I think an organization that does a lot of work to really support educators, particularly humanities educators. And again, I'm looking here, and most of you are not familiar with us, so that's really awesome. So this will be your first introduction to us, and again, I hope this won't be the last time you'll check this out for something. So very quickly, Facing History, who are we? We are a nonprofit, educational nonprofit. We've been around as an organization for 40 plus years. We have offices throughout the country. We work in different regions, New York being one of them. And we do a couple of things. One, we do professional development, mostly around humanities content. Two, we produce resources, teaching materials, also for teachers to take back into the classroom and use and teach. Some of these are units, some of these are lesson ideas, and then we also produce a lot of online stuff that I'm going to be sharing with you in the form of videos and webinars, self-paced courses that you can have access to and your students can have access to as well now. And again, I'm going to show that to you in a moment. And here you see some of the numbers in terms of how many students we've reached via teachers that we've worked with, how many teachers we've actually worked with and trained. We're working with 2,000 plus schools in the New York area. That includes Jersey, Westchester, et cetera. And again, this is just in this area. We have offices in Chicago, LA, San Francisco. We've got offices, the headquarters is in Boston. We have an office in Canada and Toronto. We work abroad also internationally. So we do have quite a bit of reach, and we do have quite a bit of presence in different areas. And again, we've been around for 40 plus years. In New York area itself, we've been around for 25 plus. So moving forward, I'm going to show you a video, and it's just an introduction to Facing History and Ourselves, very quickly to give you a sense again of how we're thinking about education, how we're thinking about pedagogy, what we think matters when we talk about teaching. Okay, so hopefully you'll be able to hear it. If not, there's a caption, there are closed captions for you to read along.
We confront history beyond just facts and figures. We empower teachers to ask tough questions and engage students in finding the answers. We equip schools with resources from the past and the tools to face the present. We examine the role of bystanders and upstanders then and now. Facing History is 60,000 teachers and more than 5 million students, standing up against hatred, racism, anti-Semitism, bigotry, and bullying. There are many classes that teach science, math, and English. There is only one that teaches us to be more human. People make choices. Choices make history. Join us.
Great. So I hope you got a sense there just of, okay, sorry about that. I'm gonna try to, let's see if we can exit here. Okay, there we go. So I hope you got a sense from the video that we're not just about content itself. I mean, we have a lot of rigorous content, but really we have an approach, and what we really want students to be thinking about is this idea of agency and choice making in connection to the world they live in. And so we use history and we use topics as a vehicle to have them explore that range of choices that they have in their lives. And we talk about ethical, moral decision making. We talk about ethical dilemmas. We talk about how can we use history to learn from the past to make better choices today. So really that at the heart of what we have and what we offer and what we do is to get students to really wrestle with bigger questions about agency, about participation in society. And we use history often as a vehicle to get students to reflect in that manner. So at this point, I'm gonna walk you through some of the resources that we have available for you as educators. And again, majority of these are actually free. I don't think at the moment we may be charging for very, very limited stuff, maybe some online or webinars, but for the majority of things we have online, they're free to access for you. So if you see there, I'm gonna quickly show you some of the teaching resources that we have made available in connection to COVID-19. And what I mean by that is just thinking about, in this particular context, how do we teach virtually, right? And some of it is about teaching practice, and some of it is about creating awareness around the outbreak, and some of it is about the sort of the consequences of the outbreak. For example, the rise in anti-Asian racism. And so there are some lessons and resources that we created around that as well for teachers to share with students and have those conversations. I'll then go into our on-demand learning center, which is really where all our virtual stuff lives. And I'll walk you through all the different elements of that. Then we'll go into our current events section. We recently, well, maybe about a year now, we've been putting up lessons almost in real time connected to current events, right? And this has been incredibly popular with teachers. So if something comes out in the news and we think it's incredibly relevant for conversation with students, we'll create a lesson idea, we'll post it, and you'll have access to that. So I'm gonna take you to that site so you can see what we have available. Then I'll go into a bit of our resource collection. I mean, we have tons of stuff, but I just wanna make you aware what some of the things, what are some of the things that exist in those collections, because they're very comprehensive. A collection means it's everything from a unit, lesson ideas, videos, lesson plans, etc. So I want to make you aware of some of those that we have. And then finally, streaming video. One of the things that we've done is opened our streaming video capacity to students themselves, and I'll share with you how we've done that. All right, so at this point, I'm going to go to the site itself. And Kevin's going to put the URL, but you could see it right there. I mean, that's the URL for organization. If you want to, type it into your browser so you can follow along, you can do that. But I will be walking you through all those different resources that I just listed.
If anybody also has any questions, again, utilizing that participant function, there's the hand raise function. Please feel free to raise your hand. And what I'll do is I will notice that. And then when there's a break in Juan's presentation, I'll chime in and you'll have that space to ask your question and get an answer.
Thanks, Greg. And if you, at some point you say, hey, Juan, can we pause for a minute? I just want to let folks, I want to share some questions for you, do that as well. Because I'll be, sort of sharing maybe in my zone and might not notice that there may be a lot of questions in the chat box. Great, so here we go. We're going to go into the website. And, the first thing that we discussed were some of these resources that we created, right, to support teachers during this particular time. And, if you go into our website, again, you type the URL. At the very top right now, if you can see here, you can click on that and that's going to take you exactly to that site, right? And if you click, this is what you're going to get. It's a landing page. And what we've done is we've curated a number of different resources that we thought would be helpful for teachers in this moment. Beginning with just, understanding COVID itself, like what is it, what does it entail? But also we've done a number of webinars. We've done a series and we're continuing to do that as well. You can see some of them here. Learning what does it mean to teach virtually in this context? How can we create community virtually with students? Also this idea of maintaining healthy schools and prepare for online learning. What are some of the things that we can put in place to ensure that students are feeling cared for, that we are addressing also their emotional and mental needs as well as their academic needs. But this is also about teachers, like how as educators we're also people, so thinking about our own needs as well as we transition into this new mode of teaching. So you can see there's a number of things here that we've curated for teachers. I just want to cite this over here. Who we are or could be in times of crisis. Going back to one of the things that we really focus on is this idea of agency. So, even in the midst of this really terrible time, we want to highlight, what are our options in terms of choices and agency? Can we make a difference? And we know, there are incredible people out there right now who are doing amazing things to save lives, to make a difference, to help out. And so we want to highlight that as well. So here's an opportunity also to bring that into students. So we can share with them also something positive that is happening in the midst of this crisis. So this is a landing page. You can go in there and click on different things. Again, you can see There are teaching ideas, there are webinars, these are recorded. And so you can, just join, register, and you'll be able to watch it at your own time, at your own pace. And then we have things like PDFs that are sort of just resources for you to think about. So I'm actually going to go into this particular PDF right now, Making School Online with a Student-Centered Approach. That is the title of this webinar. So I'm just going to quickly go in there for a moment to share some things with you. Okay. And again, this is where it lives in the website. If you clicked on it, you get to this site, and then you can download, as you can see, for free, the PDF. When you download the PDF, this is what it looks like. And I'm just going to quickly go through this. I think this is really important. Before we get into content or start thinking about teaching anything really, we feel it's incredibly important to really spend some time creating the kind of environment you want with your students online. And also thinking for yourself, what are some of those best practices you could do while teaching virtually? So, we've created this as a way of helping students, rather teachers, think through this. There's a teacher checklist, thinking about everything from the logistics, like the technical platforms, like what am I going to use? Is it going to be Zoom? Am I going to use Google Classrooms? Am I going to use Flipgrid? All of those logistical questions. And then we go into this idea of contracting, which is something at Facing History that we believe strongly in. And contracting is really setting some sort of protocols, if you will, for how you're going to engage in conversation, how are you going to engage in learning. Typically we talk about this in a classroom, but this also applies to the virtual space. And contracting is different from setting classroom rules. Rules are where the teacher tells the students, this is how it's going to play out. You break the rule, here are the penalties. Contracting is really having a conversation with your students and having them give you input into what they think they also would like to see in terms of that behavior, in terms of that engagement, in terms of like protocols for conversation, et cetera. So we believe contracting is really important, especially when we go online, because as we know with social media, there are many ways that could go wrong. And then finally, we have a section here where we show you some of the tools that may be useful to think about when you're having these kinds of conversations. So as you go down, again, you have the teacher checklist here. Lots of great questions to think about as you prepare to go online. And I'm not going to go through all of them, but everything from logistics, thinking about technical stuff, to thinking about your own school district, right? And I know that in some areas, for example, districts are not permitting certain platforms to be used in communicating with students. So these are things that we'll need to think through, right? Again, communication, right? Texting, is that allowed? Emails, et cetera. You've got to sort of know what are your tools and what are the procedures around those things. Continuity, just thinking about what are some things that you want to hold on to. If you were going to teach a particular unit before all this started, do you want to continue to do that? All right. And what are some things that maybe you're going to have to let go of and maybe change up, or maybe just actually teach different things that you were not expecting to teach? So again, just things to think through. And we've got some links here for some other readings that might be helpful for you to think of a framework for how to go through these questions and prepare. Connection, again, what are some ways that you can stay connected to your students, right? What are the tools you can use? Video, social media, et cetera. And care, this is a difficult time for everyone. So as much as we want to focus on academic stuff, which is really important right now, we also want to pay attention to the social emotional learning aspect of teaching, even on a virtual space. This is a time of a lot of stress for us, for students for sure, but also for us as educators, adults. A lot of us have, we're juggling a lot of things at the same time, like family needs, children, et cetera, our own schooling of our own kids. So, a lot to think about. But again, hopefully this is a place where you can go to start getting some clarity on what you could do to prepare yourself. Again, I talked about contracting, but here are some suggestions for some tools that could be useful. Things like Padlet, VoiceThread, Flipgrid, which we've heard is actually pretty popular right now. These are things that my understanding is you can go in, you can get accounts, and you can start using them with students in different ways to have all kinds of activities, conversations, writing activities, et cetera. And then, there's a section here on reflection. So one of the things that we really emphasize at Facing to Ourselves is, again, is dialogue. We want to continuously provide opportunities for students to share with us, right? Not just content matter, but like, how are they doing? What are they thinking? What are they feeling? It could be in connection to content, but also just in general, about their own well-being and in their own space at home right now. And so, for example, here's like, complete the sentence, something, when I think about my school closing and shifting to online learning, I feel because, it might be, I think students may appreciate just having someone ask them, well, how's this, what is this like for you, So again, really providing those opportunities for students to share with you in different ways. And again, classroom norms, I'll just go through this very quickly. As part of contracting, you want to also reflect on and give folks chances to talk about what's working, what's not working, right? So that you can make, you can have the most successful virtual teaching possible. Now, finally, this area here is again, sort of just some information to think about in terms of tools you may be able to use. If you want to connect, here are some things that we recommend could be useful. So like Google Hangouts and Zoom. For reflections, journal writing, you've got things like Padlets, graffiti boards. If you want to have students inquire or think about things on their own, again, there are some strategies here. These are all hyperlinked, by the way, so you can just click on those and they'll take you right to our website and a description of that strategy. And again, different ways to discuss and have conversations with students online. So that is sort of that PDF and that you can download for free, and hopefully it'll be somewhere where you can start before you really get into the whole content piece. I'm going to pause here for just a quick moment. Greg, anything you want to raise before I go on?
I would just open it up to the group. We don't have any hands, but again, I think that as we look at navigating the website, it is pretty intuitive, but this is a great opportunity and natural pause. If you want to hear any more about what Juan had to offer, please feel free to ask in this space. And of course, Kevin is manning the chat box. So if you have a question that you want to pose down there as well, please feel free to ask there as well. But I think Juan, as you said, great resource for teachers facing these kind of uncertain times. It makes a lot of sense. It's got a lot of great jumping off points into different technology. And the one thing, and I posted this in the chat as well, just make sure as we go and explore all this new technology that's coming out, all of these new apps, just make sure that they operate within what your district has approved, what your administrator has approved, because we all want to just make sure that students are also navigating safely and that their data is safe as well. But great presentation so far, and I think we're ready to continue on unless anybody has a question.
Great, thank you, Greg. And again, if you do have a question, just pop it into the chat box and we will have some time at the end. And by the way, everything on our website is not only streamable, but it's not blocked, okay? I know often some of the issues with districts is they'll block certain sites like YouTube, for example. The majority, I would say 90% if not more, is not blocked by districts because it's our own creation, okay? So that's something to know. Now and then we'll have something linked out to YouTube, but for the most part, it's our stuff, and so it won't be blocked. So I want to move on to the on-demand learning center. Like this, again, is where, we want to talk about virtual stuff and finding things online. This is the place to go. It has its own site, and I'm just going to quickly show you what's here. This is where you're going to find everything from webinars that were recorded that you can watch on your own, self-paced courses, lesson ideas. We actually have videos of teachers modeling teaching strategies as well. So if you're interested in doing a teaching strategy, you can go and click on that and see a teacher actually doing it. Of course, now we're not in classrooms. Nevertheless, you may be able to watch a video and see what that strategy, what's the point of the strategy and how it works with students. So I'll just click on a couple of things here I want to show you. You can filter everything, as you can see, by type of online resource, by topic. And by the way, this isn't everything we have, but these are the sort of the buckets of content that we have. So you can see there's a lot there ranging from anti-Semitism to Reconstruction for US history teachers. or Weimar, Republic, if you're teaching world history, for example, or the rise of the Nazis. It's also by subject matter. So if you're teaching civics or English, history, etc., you can click on that and it'll take you to the resources that we have for that. And then again, by strategy or approach, okay? So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna just show you a couple here. So the on-demand webinar, you click on that, and that should take you straight to all of our on-demand webinars that we have available. And as you can see, some of the first that come up are around coronavirus, but we've got others, and these are all archived. You can watch them at any moment, at any time, at your own leisure. They're typically about 50 minutes long, and there are a number of topics. Okay, so I highly recommend you go check these out. This is, most of these webinars are really for your teacher education, so for your own professional learning, but some of these you may be able to share with students if you think the content is appropriate. Okay, so I'm going to show you now the self-paced workshops because I think those are really cool too. So we offer self-paced workshops, and again, like webinars, these are some that you can take, on your own, at your own leisure. Sometimes they, depending how much you're on, but they're about a week, maybe 2 weeks long, depending on the length of the course itself. Right now, we're offering 3. We have the Teaching Red Scarf Girl, which is about the Cultural Revolution, and it's actually a course that was designed to help teachers teach the book Red Scarf Girl. But we also have one on the Holocaust behavior, for example. So if you're doing a unit on the Holocaust, that's a course you could take. And then we have one for Canadians. I don't know if there are any Canadians on the call here, but this one is specifically, I believe, that has to do with Native American history and boarding schools in Canada, which in some ways overlaps with our history here with boarding schools in the United States. So again, it may be of interest. So this is a great place to go. I highly recommend going there. Tons of stuff for you to check out virtually. And like I said, everything from content to strategies to, just modeling of classroom practices. It's all there. All right, I'm going to move now to the next section, which is our current events section. And again, this is another great site. This is where we do the best we can to put lesson ideas in real time here for teachers. And as you can see, again, one of the first things that pops up right now is some of the resources we have on the in connection to the COVID outbreak. But I'm going to show you some of these sort of lessons that we have here. If you go to the bottom and click on, view all current event resources, you'll see that we've got a number of things. So, recently there's been a real uptick on anti-Semitism and the white nationalist movement. So we've created some, an explainers, for example, to think about that to understand what's the difference between, white nationalism or white supremacy, for example, and how to make sense of it. But we've got things also on, for example, immigration, right? It's one of those topics that's been on the news quite a bit, continues to be. So we created an explainer to give students sort of the basics on how to understand migration in general, what's happening, at least here in the States, but also globally. But as you can see, when I scroll down to the current events, it's everything, right? These are lesson ideas that are responding to some news event, okay? Whether it was anti-Semitic incidents, the coronavirus outbreak, if you scroll down here, elections, caucuses, for example. So it's a range of things here that are available for you. Some of them are in the form of a blog. But again, if you're looking for current event stuff to bring your students, this is a place to go look for things. There's a lot of great things in here, and we are continuously updating this. I think almost on a weekly basis, we're putting up lesson ideas for things that may be coming up in the news that we think is relevant and important to perhaps discuss with your students. Okay, And if you click, I'll just click on one of these just so you get a sense of, you know, this one here is on media literacy. It's a great time right now to, you know, help students think through media literacy and what those skills could look like. And it's a lesson idea, you know, and, you know, you go in here, it's all spelled out step by step. Everything is hyperlinked. So you have the news articles there. A lot of these news articles, of course, were chosen specifically for classroom use. We work with New Zealand. And so some of these readings are actually differentiated for different reading levels. But as you can see, it's a lesson plan, right? It's all there for you with the kinds of the activities, the questions, the resources, the readings. If there are videos, they'll be linked in here too. So again, just give you a sense of what is available for current events in the current events section. Okay. All right, let's see, we've got some time. So I'm gonna pause here for a moment again to see if anybody has any questions on anything so far.
Again, folks, I think this is a great opportunity to seek out Juan and Kevin's expertise, right? We're teaching in unusual circumstances and in unusual times. And I think sometimes we unfortunately shy away from some of these topics because, you know, they are difficult to teach within the classroom environment. And certainly there are certain kind of nuances that we're going to want to approach these with in online, virtual, or distance instruction. But if you do have any wonderings around those, this would be a great opportunity to ask that as well. If you're also covering a particular topic and have interest in that topic, or would like to get Juan or Kevin's feedback on a particular topic that you're looking to instruct in these unique circumstances, also feel free to share your questions. And again, you can just do that by hitting the raise hand button and we'll recognize you. But don't be afraid to participate. Zoom is interesting. And oftentimes I feel like if we were in a room together, we would have that different sense of connection, but this is a safe space. This is a shared space. And certainly if you have that question, we know the old saying, then everybody else in the classroom probably also has that question. So please take that best advice that we always give to our students and feel free to chime in with a question or a thought. Great.
And, you know, I understand also how, you know, sitting and just watching someone speak forever is not the most engaging at times. So I'll try to get through this.
I got a question for you, Juan. I got a great question. Pam asked a great question. And again, we had kind of recognized the fact that we had very diverse educators coming into the classroom in terms of content area. So Pam said, our students enjoy current events. How do we bring that into a special education class? Are there any particular thoughts or recommendations in terms of bringing that alive in a special education classroom where you may have students with diverse needs?
That's a really great question, Pam. You know, when I've worked with, when we work with special ed teachers, really it comes down to figuring out what are the best strategies to help those particular students, whether it's chunking, for example, differentiate reading. Again, a lot of the resources or readings that we have in some of those current event lessons are from New Zealand. And actually, I would encourage you to go to New Zealand itself. It's a great site. And, you know, all of their readings are, you know, I think they're elementary, middle, and high, or, you know, they have levels. But I think just keeping it really simple, I would say, I mean, that's my recommendation right now, especially virtually, you know, chunking stuff. But beyond that, it's hard it's hard to know because I'm not sure what the needs of those particular students would be. And you know, what you would need to tailor for them. But I think it would just require a lot of tailoring, knowing your students very well, asking them perhaps, you know, what are some of their needs, what works for them, what doesn't work for them, trying different platforms and seeing what works and what doesn't. I think we're really in that space right now. We're just trying to see an experiment and, you know, learn as we go along what this looks like for different student populations. I know that's not like maybe what you were looking for, but that unfortunately that's what I can offer at the moment in terms of thinking about special ed students.
Any other thoughts or wonderings? And again, I'll agree, Pam, I was a special educator as well. I think New Zealand offers that opportunity where you've got it chunked out by grade level, because as much as we want students to take away the important messages here, we also want to make sure that access is guaranteed. So we want to make sure the information in itself is accessible. And just if you are dealing with difficult topics, just making sure you're unpacking them in a way, because certainly we know that different topics hit students in different ways. And if we're not in a shared classroom environment, it can be challenging to kind of read that body language. So just being extra careful in terms of how we unpack some of these things with different students, I think is just good best practice as well.
Greg, I think that's a really good point. I think, regardless of their they have special ed needs or not, I think, as we had this conversation earlier, actually, as an organization about, so right now, traditionally in some schools, it's about the time they hit World War II, for example, and they teach something like the Holocaust, right? And there may be teachers who are going to be continuing to do that. They're going to continue to, sort of try to teach that unit. And it is just really important right now to consider what content you want to share with students. I mean, something like the Holocaust is incredibly disturbing, and we're living through a very disturbing time as it is. So I think being mindful of the kinds of questions you're going to ask students around content, the kinds of content you're going to share with them, the kinds of resources you're going to share with them, I think is really important right now. We have to pay attention to this, social emotional well-being of students as much as the their academic needs at this moment. And the only real way to do that is, one, you're going to be mindful as an educator and try to be thoughtful about what you're picking to do with students, but also just engaging them in conversation and asking them, and just checking in on them, giving them opportunities for them to share with you, whether it's journal reflections, whether it's individual calls, if you can do that, if you're allowed to do that, and just having a sort of a pulse on how your students are doing emotionally as well as academically.
Hey, Juan, this is Kevin. Do you mind if I jump in for a sec?
Sure.
Hi, everyone. I'm Juan's colleague, Kevin Feinberg, the program director from Facing History's New York region. And I think that this conversation is so important. And Juan, you mentioned social emotional learning. For many students, whatever the content that they're supposed to get now, this could be the only time they get that content, right? So if they are supposed to be doing Reconstruction or World War II or the Civil Rights Movement, if they don't get it now, they might not get it at another time in school, even if they're doing it virtually. So I think it is important to make sure those important historical moments are touched on even now. But I think what Juan said is so important. Some of the more difficult, challenging, grimmer historical moments might be particularly hard for students to wrestle with now, and especially because we are virtual, it's harder for us to read their emotional reaction. So I do think telling some of those histories while emphasizing upstander behavior, resilience, resistance, survival, not to steer away from the tragic moments in history, but to have the moments within those moments that enable students to really appreciate that we're all in this together, and that there's some silver linings in some of the grimmer times too.
Thanks, Kevin. That's really important. Thank you for that. All right, so I want to move on to the next couple of things, and then we'll open it up for Q&A, and we'll see if we can answer some questions. The other thing I wanted to, again, share here with you is we have these featured resource collections. Now, if you go to Educator Resources, this tab at the very top, in that tab, you'll always see that on any page that you go to. If you go to the first opening page on our site, you'll see that. This is where you can go and, really find most of these things. And in fact, there'll be a section that's called Educator Resource Collections. And these are different from just individual lesson ideas or an individual webinar. These are comprehensive sites with, on a topic that have everything from lesson ideas, videos, units, maybe a webinar included. So this particular one that I just opened up, Children of Williston Lane, talking about the Holocaust, it's a book that was written by someone who was part of the kinder transports from England, from Austria to England. And, this may be one of the, if you were going to do something on the Holocaust, this may be a little bit more appropriate because it's really about the kinder transport. So it's more of a hopeful sort of perspective on what happened during this time. But what I wanted to show you is if you go in here, you've got, you open up the resource and you're going to see that there's a study guide for the book itself, because it's a book. And we've created a study guide for it to teach the book itself. But also in this resource collection, we've got things like the music, because part of what one of the focuses of the book is the fact that this person who was part of the Kind of Transports was learning the piano, and that was her. She was a pianist, and actually now she's, as an adult, a pianist. And so there's music as part of the book, and so we explore that, and then we have some classroom videos where you have teachers sort of, again, modeling what some of these conversations look like. So these resource collections are very comprehensive. And that's why I wanted to show them to you, because there's a lot in them. And as you can see, there are tons of different kinds. Everything, again, World War II. This is George Washington. This one here, Good Victory, No Sanction. It's talking about really the beginning of our country and what did it mean to have religious freedom in this country. You've got this one here on journalism. It's really about media literacy. This one is new, which is exciting. I just discovered this today. Latinx rights in the 60s, and particularly to California. But again, if you're looking to sort of diversify a bit your curriculum and talking about the civil rights movement, here's another another option. And again, it looks at the 1968 East Los Angeles walkouts, student walkouts, and then the workers' strike. I think it was led by Cesar Chavez. So these are, again, more comprehensive. They include a lot more things, and I recommend you checking out some of these as well. For any of this stuff, like if you're looking for anything in particular, you can always just go to the search bar right here, type it in, and you're going to get a bunch of hits, and you can go through it as well. So that might be easier at times if you're looking for something specific. Finally, what I want to sort of end with here is the fact that because we're all at home right now, including our students, and we know we're trying to do the best to teach students virtually, and we want to provide resources for you and for students, we've made all our streaming available to students regardless, without any real obstacles in the way. So typically, for example, there are two types of videos that stream on our website. One, as you can see here, it requires login and registration. So if you're a teacher, you would need to log in or register if you've never logged into anything on our site. And by the way, that's all free. You can just, it's like any other account. You enter your email, you create a password, and boom, you have an account with us. And then that particular video, or any video that requires a login, you can then watch and stream. But there are certain videos like these right here. These were created by us, and so they don't require any login at all. Anybody publicly can go in, click, and they can stream it. But we wanted to make all of it available to students, including the login ones. So what we've done is, and I'm going to give you an example here. I'm going to click on this one here. This is one of the episodes from a series called Eyes on the Prize, which is a fabulous documentary on the civil rights movement. So if you get here, you can see, again, it says login or register, right? But now we've included this bottom step here. Are you a student? And if you're a student, you just click on this, and you can then bypass that, and then you can stream the video. Okay. Now with anything, if you're gonna send students to any videos on our website or any other place, really, I highly suggest that you first watch it and make sure, again, that the content is appropriate for the age group, that or again, talking about content matter, that it's appropriate, right? That it's not going to be jarring, disturbing, or it's not going to be something they're going to watch. And we do have, not a lot, but now and then we do have some videos that include some graphic stuff. Talking about civil rights, we talk about lynching, for example. And so you just want to make sure that whatever you send students to, you feel that it's going to be okay for them to see, right? But you should know that this is now available for students as well. Okay, I'm gonna stop here now. That was it for the presentation in terms of resources. So I really want to give folks a chance to ask some questions. We've got about 15 minutes or so left, but this is a good time to ask anything you're curious about.
Terrific. So we'll give everybody a second to kind of reflect back on what we've heard. I mean, just a tremendous amount of resources, Juan, and thank you for your guidance. And Again, thank you, Kevin, as well, in responding back to the individual inquiries that were taking place in the chat. But again, just a great opportunity. Think about maybe where you are right now, especially if you are a humanities teacher, if you are a special educator. Think about where you are and maybe think about maybe some topics that you were thinking about covering, and this would be a great space to unpack those, so feel free to share that. While everybody is taking a second, though, to kind of gather their thoughts, I am going to post down in the chat 2 links. One link is a link to our ongoing professional learning on the go, which again is part of what you're seeing right here. And again, is only possible through the partnership of great institutions like Facing History and ourselves, and the dedicated staffs of those organizations. And the second one is a Google form, which I would just encourage you to fill out at the very conclusion of this, which talks a little bit about what your takeaways were from today's session, but also has a big part of it where, if you have further wonderings going forward that you would like to see addressed, whether it be with an organization like Facing History, or if now you're thinking about maybe how you could have students build tasks around this. And certainly we can kind of open that up to discussion as well. But if anybody has any questions or wonderings, please feel free to raise your hand. Or if you would prefer to just post it right in the chat, and then either myself or Kevin can verbalize it out, or Juan can read it and we can talk through it that way as well. Any thoughts at all? So let me ask you a question then, Juan and Kevin. In terms of, let's say I'm an educator, great presentation today, I'm ready to jump into this. And as I jump into this and I start to unpack lessons, I do run into some questions, or I do feel like I need guidance or support going forward. What kind of resources does Facing History and Ourselves offer teachers in that way? What would be the best way for a teacher to communicate with you or to reach out with you, to you if they had questions or needed additional support?
That's a great question, Greg. So Kevin's is going to put actually a link into the chat box, or a URL that's for a Google survey. And it's not really a survey, it's really to get information. So if you're interested in staying in touch, and one of the things that we do as an organization is that we do what we call follow-up, which means that if you do have a question, if you do want to brainstorm some ideas, if you do need some help with some stuff that you want to figure out in terms of resources that you want to use that are ours, we're available to do just what we're doing right now, literally one-on-one. I have Zoom calls with teachers that I work with. So if that's what you're interested in doing, fill the Google Doc survey. That will give us some information. We're going to have you then in our system, and then we're going to send out an email afterwards. So after this presentation in the coming week or two, we'll send out the PowerPoint to you and the links for resources, and then we'll be available, to help you if you reach back to us and say, hey, I really want to talk to somebody in the New York team to discuss some resources. Then we'll be able to do that. But we would need that information first. Otherwise, there's no way for us to get back to you.
Great. So we have a couple comments in the chat. Kevin just went ahead and shared the survey, so please do take advantage of that, because again, we're working with a great organization here who really wants to tailor this experience to the individual needs of educators and to students as well. Lots of thank yous as well. Hi folks, that link may not work. Try this one here. Thank you, Renee. It looks like my 2 links kind of merged together a little bit right there. Other questions, other thoughts for Juan or Kevin at this point? Anything else that you would like to chime in with as well, Kevin?
I will add that, because we do have the partnership with PNW BOCES, obviously you can reach out to me, you can reach out to Juan, but if you contact your folks at the BOCES, they know how to get in touch with us as well. And Juan and I, our colleague, Karen Schur, who unfortunately can't be with us today, she spends a good chunk of her time supporting educators and partnering with the schools that PNW BOCES supports and works with. So she's your normal go-to, but any one of us is here and available to help you find a resource or to help you think through a resource and to tell you more about Facing History. You can contact us in the New York office anytime.
Yeah, and I'll just say too that first, the website is wonderful. It's there for you. It's, again, the majority of everything that's there is free access. But at one point we'll get through this, and we will be able to offer in-person professional development again. And so I just want to put that out there, that we look forward to, again, being able to offer that type of support as well in the future. So I encourage you to stay in touch. I encourage you to look us up, check out the website, fill out the form, and hopefully we'll have a chance to continue to work with you in the future.
Awesome, Renee. Thank you for sharing even more information. I also did just want to follow up with everybody who's still in here. We are going to also have another presentation tomorrow, really geared towards social studies and ELA teachers, again, in the humanities. The Cunhard Film Institute, which does a lot of films with HBO, is going to be doing a presentation on moral leadership and using film materials and film resources. And a lot of their films also have a very strong social justice tone kind of emanating from them. So another great opportunity to look at really diverse resources from great organizations that are partnering with us. And again, I cannot thank you, Juan and Kevin, enough for giving of your time today and for really doing what's best for educators. We're all in this together. And I think the one really silver lining of all of this is that it's just creating these new community bonds, and people are being connected in a way that they might not have if we were business as usual. So thank you, gentlemen, for presenting today, and thank you all for joining us. And we'll just leave the space open for another 10 seconds or so if anybody has any questions or last wonderings.
And I'll remind you again that we're going to be offering a series of webinars. We have been since this started, and we'll continue to do that. So just go to the website, and you'll see a calendar there for webinars. And I know there's a couple coming up in the next couple of weeks as well. So always a great opportunity to continue doing some professional learning that way.
All righty, well, terrific, and wish everybody here continued health and continued peace in these times. Certainly, if you are celebrating any holidays this week, good tidings to you as well. And we are here to support you, and look forward to continuing to connect with everybody. All right, everyone, be well, and we'll see you all soon.